Hello and welcome to the People Grow Places podcast, where we explore the virtuous circle of people, growth and place. Brought to you by Grow Places and hosted by our founder, Tom Larson.
Welcome back to the People Grow Places podcast. Today we're joined by Louise Richmond from the Mayor's Fund for London. It's an amazing conversation that covers a massive amount of ground on people, place and what we can do to help. So enjoy the conversation, let's take it away.
So Louise, hi. Thank you
Tom.
very much for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks for inviting me.
No worries at all. It's great, and it's really good to kind of continue this relationship that we've had over the past few years, and everything that you guys here are doing at the Mayor's Fund for London is amazing, and it's making such an impact on people's lives. So thank you for kind of everything you're doing, really.
Oh, well, thank you. No, it's been quite a few years with the pandemic and now obviously the cost of living crisis, and we sort of have to be very nimble in terms of how we react to the increasing need. But it's a good place to work.
Yeah. No, great. And just so I was on the website before coming over, just to kind of make sure I get the wording right, but to kind of summarise the mission, I think it's of the Mayor's Fund for London, it's to provide opportunities for young Londoners from low-income backgrounds and diverse communities.
Yeah, I would say pretty much. We have a sort of standard boilerplate, but then often when I'm meeting people and I'm thinking, what's my elevator pitch here? But yeah, essentially we are a social mobility charity that champions the life chances for young Londoners from low-income backgrounds. But we work in different spaces, as you know, food, numeracy, employability and entrepreneurship. So it's almost supporting young Londoners across their life journey.
Yeah, great. And you touched on some of those themes there that maybe we'll sort of dive into in a bit more detail. But as you know, sort of the theme of this podcast is exploring the virtuous circle between people, growth and place. And, you know, I speak to a number of people who are in the industry, but you come from a different perspective. You know, your day job isn't being in the built environment industry. So you can kind of look at what we do and you can look at cities and places with a slightly different eye. So if I was to kind of ask, you know, an overarching question, you know, so how do you think places, and by that I mean kind of cities, neighbourhoods, you know, buildings and maybe individual spaces, how do they enable young people to grow on the positive side? And then equally on the other side, how do you think maybe they don't, or maybe they kind of, you know, sort of hold people back in some sense?
Okay, I think I'll start with the sort of positives in terms of place-based support. I mean, the young people that we support they come from right across London, from every London borough. That's where our work is, in every London borough. But our Kitchen Social Food and Wellbeing programme focuses on working with a network of 100 community hubs. Local hubs, when I say community hubs, I mean local community centres. They could be primary schools which deliver holiday activities and food during the school holidays. They could also be places of worship. So we call them hubs. But this is where we bring young people together during the school holidays, and sometimes now after school, and also at weekends. So those hubs are key within each neighbourhood in terms of they know what their local community needs, and we support those organisations to help young people so that they can hopefully get what they need from those hubs. So I would say in terms of places and buildings and central amenities, those are key to the well-being of young people in London, as long as they're aware that they're there and they can get what they need from them. The struggle that we're having at the moment is that there is funding for holiday activities, but it's not enough. The government put in place a 3-year plan to support with holiday activities and food funding, but it's calculated on the amount of young people who are eligible for a free school meal. Now, given there's 280,000 young people who are eligible, but the threshold to be eligible after benefits and tax is £7,000, as an annual household income of £7,400. You can see where the massive disparity lies. But without those organisations that provide meals and activities during the holidays, young people wouldn't have anywhere to go. We've recently got an amazing grant from the GLA. The Mayor has given us a grant. We're in partnership with the Felix Project, which is enabling us over the next year to deliver 10 million meals. There's various forms to that, but we are delivering recipe boxes called Take and Make, which are made up of ingredients, dry and fresh ingredients, but recipes key that they can be cooked at home together, but they don't need high usage of energy. So families don't need to turn their oven on for example, for a long time, because we know that the communities that we're supporting are really struggling to make ends meet, particularly with paying their energy bill. The community hubs that we work with as well, they act as warm spaces during the winter. So again, that's a great way to bring communities together. And without those community spaces, people would struggle. It brings people together for food. It brings young people together in the holidays. It's a safe space for young people to be in the holidays. What we also have to be aware of is the young people need somewhere within their own postcode. Because I'm sure you're aware there are postcode issues with gangs and young people not wanting to go into another postcode because they know that they're going to get into trouble. So we have to be very sensitive to those facts as well. So those spaces can be a good thing, but then in terms of what's out there in the rest of London, there's a lot of locations which young people don't have access to. Firstly, the cost of travel. We find that a lot of the young people we support, like we hold every year at City Hall, we hold a competition called the Counternas Maths Challenge, where we bring together 12 teams of young people from primary schools, and then we hold an event for secondary school students. Now, those students will come from a range of boroughs. They could come from Tower Hamlets, they could come from Hammersmith and Fulham, but quite often you'll find that the young people, once they come to these events, some of them never left their borough. And there'll be various reasons for that. One, the postcode. Two, the cost to travel. And also just not knowing about the opportunities that are out there and just not having access to them. Sorry, I was babbling.
No, not at all. Well, I was noting down because at the start of when you were saying that, you kind of referred a few times to young people getting what they need from the hubs, and I was going to kind of ask, well, what do you think they need? And you've kind of summarised some of it there, as you say, sort of, some of those kind of basic human needs about warmth and shelter, food, safety, some of those quite human things, and then there's some kind of more location-specific things like, as you say, being very local. Travel distances, and then maybe some more kind of growth mindset approaches around, knowledge and upskilling and those kind of things. And do you think that kind of summarises it, or is there anything else in there? Yeah, pretty
much. I mean, the opportunities and the upskilling is important, particularly for teenagers. So what we found is that the current activities that are offered and the delivery that we're supplying, and we're working with hubs to do this together very much, is that it's great for kids aged sort of 4 to 12, but once they hit that sort of teenage time, their engagement tends to drop off. So what we need to be doing is providing activities and opportunities for them that will keep them engaged and keep them coming back to the local hubs and organisations. So we work with schools. So during the term time, we run a programme called Access Aspiration, which I know you're familiar with, which is an employability programme for young people. And how we work with other organisations in London, we work with businesses. So we give these young people the opportunity to come with their schools into offices so they can see what it's like to be in an office, but actually to hear about all the different opportunities that are on offer within each sector, be it publishing, be it banking, or be it the built environment. And the opportunity it gives these young people is actually, as I said, they quite often won't have left their neighbourhood, but they'll come into, let's say, Oxford Street, and they will go to an office of one of our business partners, and they will have never been somewhere like that before. They might have been to, it might have been Primark, or they might have been shopping, and they might have gone to eat, but they might not have actually seen these offices and actually realise that, I could work somewhere like that. There is a place for someone like me like that, because often we'll find that the young people we're working with is that they are the first person in their family who's thinking about going to university, and they lack the connections and the opportunities to be able to take those up. So this is why Access Aspiration is such a important programme for young Londoners. We've currently got 3,500 young people signed up. We're working with 53 secondary schools across London this year, and the key for us is to be able to bring London businesses together with young people and show them what the opportunities are.
Yeah, and I think your partnership approach, that's really good, because a lot of it's about education, isn't it, on both sides. So sticking with that theme then, so what a couple of questions come out of that for me. So the first is, what do young people think about the built environment and the built environment industry?
Well, it's a good question, which is why we launched a campaign 18 months ago called Firm Foundations, which I know you're aware of. Now, Firm Foundations was born out of a conversation that one of my colleagues, who's since moved on, sadly, to another organisation, had with a group of businesses within the built environment. There were the conversations with JLL, with Stanhope, who you used to work for, and a working group was formed about what do you think young people think about the built environment? What do they know? Do they just have one impression of it? And also, what's the diversity like within the industry? And I think the general consensus was it's not very diverse, but we need to change things radically and soon. And how do we go about that? So we launched the campaign, and we have sort of with a series of thought leadership sessions where we got people together from the businesses to talk about, where they felt the issues are, what people thought about the built environment. Is it full of middle-aged, white businessmen who play golf and go to the pub a lot? Probably yes, but actually there's a lot more to it than that. And what are the different roles within the organisations where we can talk to young people about, what's their opinion? Do they think, oh, built environment, I'm a builder? No. Or I'm an architect. It's not just that. There's so many different facets to the built environment. So what we've done over the past 18 months is we have hosted a series of events where we've brought together employers from the built environment together with young people from our network of Access Aspiration schools. So last summer, we held an event at Dulwich College where we brought together an array of partners from our Firm Foundation who signed up to our Firm Foundation campaign. But we had people from PR, Camargue PR, who've been a great partner of ours, came and spoke. We had a marketing agency who specifically work with businesses from the built environment, and we had somebody from Savills who came and spoke. But what we had also, which was great, is we invited young people who were working within these businesses so that there were relatable role models for the young people who came from our Access Aspiration schools, and there was a lot of opportunities for networking afterwards. And I felt it was a really inspirational event. We had a lot of young people there who were asking questions of the businesses there and opportunities for apprenticeships. And we'll be hosting an event, I think it's in July, at City Hall. Oh, I think it's at City Hall. Oh, sorry. Anyway, we'll be hosting an event later this year where we will be inviting young people to meet our partners from the built environment to talk about the power of apprenticeships, which is a great opportunity for these businesses to share their apprenticeship opportunities with young people. I think that historically there's been quite a lot of stigma around the idea of an apprenticeship, but really there shouldn't be. It's a great way for a young person to get into an industry they're interested in, but not only that, they're going to come out of that debt-free. Right? Not everybody needs to go to university.
Well, no, I completely agree with you on that point. I think, it'd be good to get your thoughts on the education system generally and how well it supports. Maybe we've got enough time on that, to be honest. But I've got, my own opinions on some of this stuff, and I agree with you. I think, learning on the job is the best way to do it. To be honest, most things, particularly in a digitised world we're going into, before you even talk about, artificial intelligence and what that's going to do to traditional kind of knowledge-based work. Learning on the job I think is really, really important. And you mentioned a theme there, relatable role models, and that must be so important, isn't it? And call to companies, to have relatable role models. That means that obviously you've got to increase the diversity within your employees. So
right from the get-go, we've had conversations internally about, what does the Mayor's Fund for London look like, for example? We're an organisation that supports a diverse group of young Londoners, but how diverse are we actually? And the issues, we find in recruitment, we want to recruit people from a diverse background, but they need to be there in the first place, but they also need to be aware of those opportunities. So what we're doing here at the Mayor's Fund is actually making those opportunities available from a much younger age, making sure awareness is built of all the different sectors and the different roles within those sectors, so young people can be well equipped with information when they're making those decisions about further education, i.e. do they want to go into apprenticeship or do they want to go into further education? is there a specific subject they should study to enable them to get on that journey more quickly? So, yeah.
No, well, I agree. And but where? I know maybe it's a generality, but where would you say the young people's kind of interests lie? Where, is it in?
Oh my goodness,
certain areas, or?
Yeah, definitely in certain areas. I mean, we survey the students that we support every year. In fact, not every year, regularly. And when students sign up to Access Aspiration in September, October time, we ask them, what sectors are you interested in? You can imagine finance, law, medicine, very, very popular. But more and more, the answer is AI, tech. So we've got to try and be one step ahead and actually have relationships already. If we don't, we've got to act very quickly to make sure we're building relationships with those businesses in London so that we can offer out those opportunities. Yeah. But a lot of young people are actually incredibly interested in entrepreneurship now. They're like, I've got my own side hustle going already. I want to do this. So how can we support them with that?
Yeah, and that's kind of some of those professions and jobs you've mentioned are kind of quite defined roles, aren't they? But if you try and look beyond that to the young person, do you feel like you've got a grasp on kind of like maybe the why behind some of these things? What are they trying to do? Are they, because you hear narratives like, the younger generations are very much more kind of open-minded. They're more about service than about kind of, personal rewards. Do you see some of that kind of come through, or do you think
I think that young people have probably got it right. Not probably, I think they've definitely got it right in terms of they want to feel supported in their work. The mental health is a priority, and absolutely so it should be. I mean, when I started work back in the early 90s, the words mental health were like a dirty word. You just didn't, it wasn't mentioned. Flexible working, what's that? And I mean, that's something we've got to thank COVID for, is the fact that we can work flexibly now. So I think young people, yes, with the ones that I've spoken to through our mock interview sessions and so on and networking events, there's definitely, they want to do something that is going to make the world a better place. I definitely get that sense, which is great. And whether that's working in the built environment, working in sort of an environmental theme, or they want to work in the third sector, pity it's not paid as well. That's a problem, a lot of the problem we have. But whether, whatever they want to do, it seems to have that mental health and support and well-being is a key to all of that.
Yeah. I completely agree. And just circling back, so on the well-being side of things, you touched on the kitchen social, which is another aspect of this, and you mentioned that it's an out-of-term events program for people who maybe aren't fortunate enough to have as much structure, maybe, or when they're out of term. And there's a couple of points came up about combating poor nutrition and social isolation. And poor nutrition is not necessarily one that the built environment go too far in solving, but social isolation, maybe is. Is there anything you wanted to add around social isolation?
Social isolation is a big issue during school holidays because parents are at work and young people are often at home, and it's about creating a safe space for them to go where they feel they're with their peers, they can get something to eat without stigma. That's key here. It must be without stigma. And that's the beauty of Kitchen Social. It's a fully inclusive programme. We don't stop you at the door and say you can't come in because you're not officially eligible for a free school meal. If you need a meal, then there's one there for you. So our hubs are amazing at juggling, the cost of living in terms of the prices of the food that they've got to go out and buy. They're constantly having to juggle that with how many young people have you got coming today, and obviously everybody's got to re-register, but they don't ever want to turn anyone away, and they won't. So it's incredibly important that young people don't feel isolated at home and feel that there is a space where they can go and hang out with other people, even if they're just chilling in the corner reading a book, or if they're outside playing football, or somewhere where there's some more structured activity. A lot of our hubs will lay on structured activities throughout the day. So, for example, I went to see one of our partners, the Avenues, which is in Westminster. It's in northwest Westminster. I went over May half term, and it's in the most incredible facility. But there's young people can go and they can do boxing. They were playing softball. There was young people creating in the art room. They were all coming coming there as well so that they can get a meal. They run a breakfast club, but more and more the hubs are saying, the kids are going home and there's nothing to eat at home after school, so they're coming in for a meal in the evening, they're coming in at the weekends as well. So if they're aware of the opportunities, and there are those opportunities locally, we can help. But what we really need funding for now is to increase our network of hubs. We're only working with 100 organisations across London, but we know that our partners and friends at the Felix Project are supporting over 1,000 community hubs. So there's so much more that we can do, and we should be doing, to prevent social isolation.
Yeah, absolutely, and the need is very much there, isn't it? And I'll kind of go back on what I said based on your answer about poor nutrition not being helped by the built environment. And actually, as you're saying, if a big component of this is actually providing compelling reasons why young people would go and engage in these hubs, and alongside that they then get a good meal, that's
I hope that, and I know that with most large developments, and I don't work in the built environment, so I don't profess to know much about this, but I know that social housing is often a large element of a bid when a building is being created, and it would be wonderful if every time there's a big project and a big building developed in London, imagine if every new building in London had a social hub where people from the neighbourhood could go and get a meal. That would just be like the dream for us here, just to know that there was something like that on offer. Not just the housing. Obviously housing's critical in London, and I know that the mayor is committed to building hundreds of thousands of more homes each year, but actually it's the social isolation piece, the food piece. Without food and a meal, how can a young person grow? Their brain needs to develop, and if they're not being stimulated, but also their body's not being fed, their brain doesn't develop properly, their organs don't grow properly. There's plenty of research, you can read about that. Yeah. And then obviously without food, can't learn. If you don't do well at school, what are your opportunities moving forward in terms of employability? So that's what we're trying to do here at the Mayor's Fund. We're trying to support right from sort of, I guess it's what we call the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, in terms of making sure that every child in London has access to everything that they need, important to grow and find gainful employment in the city eventually and find somewhere to live. But what we're finding now is that more young people can't actually afford to live in London because of the rising costs of rent. That's a whole other conversation I could get into with you.
No, and absolutely, and that is obviously a key theme. Affordability, we touched on that in a previous episode of the podcast, and it's a very difficult one at the moment, particularly. But you mentioned there about the industry, and I do think the environment industry is kind of becoming much more aware of these types of themes, and they are actually getting integrated a lot more into our briefs. And there's industry jargon, you could call it, but we talk about social infrastructure within the built environment projects, and I think you've given a really good kind of steer to listeners there about how you might go about kind of integrating and delivering social infrastructure that is really meaningful for people and for local communities. So thanks for doing that.
I feel quite strongly that it shouldn't be a tick box exercise. Okay, well we've done this, and actually let's push our social housing over here so it doesn't interfere with our £3 million apartments. Actually, let's integrate this into the community, and let's make sure that the social housing has got a really good range of facilities to support that.
Yeah, completely. So Louise, just kind of stepping back a little bit from the amazing work you're doing here at Mayor's Fund for London, you personally, you mentioned earlier, a life in the third sector is not always an easy one. So why do you personally do what you do?
I do it because I love it, because it's a great reason to get up in the morning. I've always been a fundraiser. Ever since I was 5 years old, my mother first gave me a book of raffle tickets at the local village fete, and I was like, oh, I like doing this. But I think it was when I had a child. He's 14 now, and I looked around me, and I'm very lucky. I live what I would call pretty privileged lifestyle. I live in a nice house, and I'm looking around me and thinking, not everyone's like this. Of course they're not. My son went to a school. We were looking for a new charity partner, and I met this lady called Camilla Batman-Gelage from Kids Company, and I went and listened to her speak, and I volunteered my time, and I went out and looked around London, and I visited a lot of community organisations, and then I saw firsthand where the need was, and I thought, I want to do my bit here. This is somewhere I need to help, even do my small bit. So I started there, and then moved full time into the third sector after that. So I've been doing it about 10 years now. But whatever you do, it never feels like it's enough. But we just keep on. It's been really, really tough, particularly recently. I think COVID was great in a way, because a lot of trusts and foundations and partners came to us and said, what can we do to help? And there was definitely money flowing through, but I think now there's a lot of tightening belts, and a lot of our individual supporters are struggling as well to make the sort of regular donations that they were making before. So the landscape's pretty tough out there at the moment, but we're doing our best.
Yeah, no, and thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for sharing that. And just for the listeners out there, if you had a call to action for them, what can they do if they listen to this and really want to kind of get involved with what you're up to?
I would say it's not about just making financial donations. I mean, obviously that's amazing if you're in a position to do that, but actually look in your local neighbourhood and find out where the community organisations are. If you've got time, go and volunteer your time, go down and see them and ask them, what do you need? How can I help? I live in the local neighbourhood. Do you know young people who might benefit from taking part in a kitchen social programme at one of the local community organisations, or even if it's not a community organisation that we work with, look and find out what those opportunities. And I think that was a great thing about COVID, is that there was a huge sense of community. Like, what can we do to help other people? Like, some people are sitting at home going, well, I'm lucky, I've got a job. I haven't lost my job. I'm on furlough, or I'm actually working, but what can I help to do people in local neighbourhoods? So there was definitely a greater sense of awareness about what people need. So if you want to help, for example, go and find your local food bank. Maybe you can volunteer a couple of hours. If you're able to, in a position to, donate food to your local food bank. So there's so many things that you can do, I think, if you want to look out there. I mean, there's a great app called Nextdoor, which I'm on, where there's always people talking about, where there's help needed. Your local church, for example, as well. Our local church does a lot in the neighbourhood to help people, but also bring people together. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to get involved if you want to look for them. Alternatively, you can get in touch with me, and I'm sure we can find some volunteering opportunities.
That's great, Louise. It's great. Some great advice and insights there. So thanks for sharing that. And I'm sure people will reach out to you directly or as they can in the local communities. So just to end the podcast, we have a bit of a tradition now where our previous guest asks a question for you, and they don't obviously know who the guest is. And after we wrap today, we'll ask you to write one down for the next guest. So
okay.
This is a bit potentially quite a open-ended one to end on. And keep it clean, but the question is, what is your party trick? And you could maybe add, as it relates to work.
Has it got to be related to work?
It doesn't have to be related to work. Yeah, because
I kind of putting party and work in two separate boxes here, because I have to be very responsible at work. What's my party trick? Well, I can make a bra out of a napkin, but you told me to keep it clean, so perhaps that wasn't...
It's either got to be a big napkin or a small bra.
It's a small bra.
It's a small bra.
My grandfather taught me that when I was about 7, and that's my party trick.
Good, very good. Well, that's a great way to end, and thank you for sharing that, and thanks for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for helping raise awareness of the big issues that are affecting Londoners.
Yeah, and we'll continue the conversation, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Louise.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the People Grow Places podcast. For more information, visit growplaces.com and follow us at We Grow Places across all social channels. See you next time.